Hello BookTube, Sarah here, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with my weekly reads for September the 1st of 2018. Happy September, everybody. This is actually take two. I filmed this entire video and went to do my editing, and all the files were corrupted. They weren't corrupted. For some reason, the editing software that I use did not like the format that these were filmed in originally, so I had to do some, you know, technical Google searching to try and figure out what I'd done wrong. I was very, very disappointed, really frustrated to tell you guys the truth. So I kind of debated, I'm like, do I want to record again or not? And I'm like, I really wanted to record and sit down and talk to you guys, so I'm doing it again. So for those of you who might not have seen last week's weekly reads, my old cell phone kicked the bucket, and I have a new one. My old one was an S7, this is an S9. And Samsung, and there's lots of different options of how to film videos and stuff like that. So I've been really playing around with it. This is the first time that I've used it for filming. Sorry, the cat's been the cat was quiet all afternoon. Now he's whining again. So anyway, I'm a little bit disappointed because I have to refilm it all. Or I don't have to. I mean, I don't have to sit down and do this, but I wanted to. I need to sit down and like refilm it all, and but it's okay, I guess. There's one thing that I did towards the end with my knitting stuff that I'll tell you about when I get there, that I'm a little bit disappointed because I kind of did an unwrapping, and you can't really redo that. I could, but you kind of lose the surprise and the fun. But on the flip side, I am kind of glad that I'm having to redo it because it was almost 50 minutes long. So, you know, it is what it is. So we are here, you know, it's late. It's like after 9 o'clock on Saturday night. I usually try and film these on Friday night, but last night I was, you know, it's been a really rough week at work, and I had to do running around last night after work, which I hate stopping to do. Like, I hate doing errands on a Friday night especially. I just want to get home. So I didn't get home till later last night. I wasn't in the mood to record. So then I tried to do it this afternoon, and then of course the files were corrupted. So here we are again. Fingers crossed this works. So what am I drinking tonight? I'm being good, guys. It's just water. It is 86% humidity outside right now. I can't take this anymore. I am so over summer, it's not even funny. I know there are a lot of you out there who love the hot weather. I am not one of those people. I don't complain very often about my congenital condition. I don't use it as an excuse. I never have. It is what it is. It's a part of who I am, but because of it, I'm one of those people, like, if, you know, the weather gets really bad, you hear them saying on the news, like, you know, make sure to check on elderly relatives or neighbors or people with chronic conditions or children, and that's me. I do not do well in the heat, and unfortunately, this has just been a really bad summer, and they're not going to get any better. We have an air conditioner. It's just behind me. It's in the wall, but it only really does this one room. And I haven't been sleeping well because it's so hot in the bedroom. We are going to put some money aside, and next summer we are getting one of those window air conditioners for the bedroom because I can't do it again. This is why I love fall and spring. I've said to my husband, I'm like, let's move to the West Coast. Let's go to Vancouver. I don't care if it rains every day. I don't think they get the humidity that we get here. I'm done. I'm absolutely done. It cannot start to cool down fast enough for me. September is here though, so there is an end in sight, and I'm so thankful for that. So anyway, sorry guys, I've rambled on about the weather for 5 minutes, so I do apologize. So yes, I'm drinking water, trying to stay hydrated, and the problem is that our apartment faces west, so we get the sun in the afternoon, and it just becomes like an oven in here. It's horrible. Anyway, enough about that. Let's talk about some books. So I finished 6 books this week. Okay, so let me say this. I finished 6 books this week, but I did not read all the books that I had set out to read on my August TBR. I did finish all my challenges though, so I moved books around just so I could fit them into the challenges. The couple of books that I did not finish, they were Say Yes to the Marquess by Tessa Dare and The Night Mark by Tiffany Rice. Both of those I'm moving over to my September TBR, so I'm hoping to get to them in September. But like I said, I did finish all my challenges for August. So that made me very happy. That's my end goal at the end of the day. As long as I get my challenges done, I'm happy with myself. So yes, so 6 books. Let's talk about them, shall we? So the first book that I finished was Double Love by Francine Pascal. This is a YA fiction / romance novel. It is Sweet Valley High book number 1. Published originally in 1984 by Bantam. I was 5 when this book came out. It has 3.53 star rating on Goodreads. I gave it 3 stars. Most of my back to my childhood books that I'm reading, the Nancy Drew, the Babysitter's Club, the Sweet Valley, I generally give them between 3 and 3.5 stars, just because they're not, to me, they're not horrible, but they're not fantastic. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Sweet Valley universe, essentially, these are the stories about a set of twin sisters named Jessica and Elizabeth Wakefield and their friends and all the wacky adventures that they go on. This is essentially just a soap opera, a teenage soap opera in book form. Because literally, the end of this book leads into the next book. So it's like almost like you're watching a soap opera on television. At the end of the episode, it's like, stay tuned tomorrow for blah, blah, blah. That's pretty much what happens at the end of these books. They are tacky, they are trashy, they are a lot of fun. I do not recommend them if you've never read the Sweet Valley books before. If you're an adult and you're like, oh, I've heard about Sweet Valley, but I've never read it before, don't. You know, if you want to pick it up, pick it up. But if it's not something that you ever read, I don't really recommend it, because for me, I'm reading them for nostalgic purposes only. You know, they are fun little campy stories, but, you know, if you don't hold that same appeal that you know, I do or my generation does, you might not appreciate them the same way. Does that make sense? Because like I said, they are trashy, but they're trashy in the most fun form ever. I mean, you know, they're just such a throwback nostalgic thing for me. And yeah, I'm going to enjoy working my way back through the series again. But, you know, they're not necessarily for everybody. So the next book that I finished this week, talk about a completely different book, is Deeper by Bang and Hart. This is an erotic novel, excuse me. It was narrated on audio by Savannah Richards, who did a brilliant job, I might add. I really, really, enjoyed her narration. I have the hiccups. This was originally published in 2009 by Spice, which is an imprint of Harlequin. Side note on this one, when the Dare line came out earlier this year by Harlequin, people kept going on that this was the spiciest line that Harlequin had ever done, and blah, blah, blah. No, it wasn't. Harlequin at one point produced an erotica line called Spice. Tiffany Rice, Rice? I want to say Rice. I'm just going to go with Rice. She wrote for them a series. I can't remember the name of it. I think there were 7 books in the series. Megan Hart wrote a lot for them as well. These were really great books. The majority of them were really good. So, you know, I kind of, you know, they kept going on about Harlequin pushing the envelope and why did Harlequin wait so long to bring this out? They had the Spice line years ago, but for whatever reason they got rid of it. And, you know, I would like to say, I would have liked that to come back instead of, to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the Dare books. I think they're riding the coattails a little too late of 50 Shades of Grey. That's just my personal opinion. But, you know, I mean, they're not bad. I've read them, but they're not my favorite. I find they're a slightly darker tone, whereas a lot of the Spice books don't necessarily take that darker tone. And when I say darker, I don't mean evil and I don't mean bad. Sorry, I'm going on a whole other tangent here, not about the book. I'll get back to the book, I promise. But they're not the Blaze books that they were, I guess, replacing, quote unquote. I love the Blaze books because they tended to be fun. There was, you know, they had a lightheartedness to them. Does that make sense? They weren't, I don't know how to describe dark, but I think a lot of you might know what I'm getting at. You know, they tend to toe the line on a lot of things, and that's cool, that's fine if that's your thing. That's not my personal thing. I don't mind adult content in books. Obviously, I read erotica, it doesn't bother me in the least. But I don't like it when it goes into that darker territory. That 50 Shades, I hate keep saying 50 Shades of Grey, but it's the only thing that I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. That it goes into that darker place. It's hard to describe, and I'm sorry. You know, maybe I'll try and do an entire video on it and talk to you guys about it. But yeah, this I enjoyed. Like, this, Deeper was really good. So let me get back to Deeper. It has an average star rating of 3.58 stars on Goodreads, and I gave it 4 stars, guys. I really enjoyed this book. Now, this was actually a reread for me, and I'll get into that in just a minute. So I got 3 challenges done for this one. For the Triple RC for August, number 8, which was National Honeybee Awareness Day, which was something about read a book with nature on the cover, and water is on the cover, and water is nature. And for my summer romance book bingo, which I did not complete, sadly, I was too short. Those are the 2 books that I didn't get to. 3 books I didn't get to. I know. Next year I will do better, I promise. I got for the subgenre of paranormal romance because, guys, not only is this an erotica, it's paranormal. So for those of you whose boxes this might tick, check this book out. For the Where Are You Reading Challenge, which is to read a different book from all the different states, I got the state of Delaware for this one, so that was fun. So, paranormal erotica romance. Not generally my cup of tea. The reason I've realized that I don't much care for paranormal is I don't get the relationship between a human and a vampire, or a human and a shapeshifter, or a human and an alien. It's just not my thing. I'm not mocking it. If it's your thing, you do you. Whatever makes you happy. It's not for me. Now this book, not that I'm justifying it, but this book was extremely well written and I really liked the story, is the relationship between a human woman and a ghost. So, plot of this story is, it's about a woman by the name of Bess. And Bess is a grown woman. She's in her early 40s. And she has 2 teenage boys. Her oldest, I think, is about to go off to college. And her younger boy is 2 years younger. So like maybe 15 and 17 or something like that. She's in the middle of separating from her husband. And she goes back to her family's beach house in Bethany Beach in Delaware, which is actually the same place that, I think I mentioned this last week, that Map of the Hart takes place in, which is just weird. It's weird to me that I read 2 books back to back that take place in the very same tiny little town in Delaware. And so anyway, she's back at this beach house. And she spent her summers there when she was working her way through college. Bethany Beach is a tourist town. Like it says on its Wikipedia entry, because I did read the Wikipedia article on it, because I couldn't believe this was actually a real place. Not that it's like out there and it's not, but do you know what I mean? Like the fact that I read 2 books with the same location, I was surprised that it was a legit location. And so it's a tourist town with a beach. And so they have like 1,500 people who live there year round, but in the summertime it swells to like 150,000 or something like that, something ridiculous. So anyway, she worked through the summers there, and she lived at this beach house with her grandparents and various other relatives who would come on vacation. So the story takes place in dual timelines. So you get the present day with Beth as an adult with these 2 grown boys and going through the divorce, and then you get the timeline, and it literally says then and now. Like that's how each chapter is labeled. And then is her 20 years earlier, during the summer, having this relationship with this local boy by the name of Nick. So, beginning of the book, Nick comes back as she's an adult, like in the now time period. Nick comes back, but it's never been confirmed because no one ever knew what happened to him. They just thought he went away and never came back to town. You know, he didn't have, like, his parents had passed away. He had been being looked after by an aunt and uncle, but, you know, as soon as he turned 18, he left, you know, that kind of a situation. So nobody really was watching out for him, and then all of a sudden he just disappeared. And people just assumed he left town. And now all of a sudden there he is. Beth didn't even know what happened, or Bess, I keep wanting to call her Beth, I apologize. Bess didn't even know what happened to him. So now he comes back, but she realizes very quickly, A, he hasn't aged a day. And when she asks where he's been, he just says he was in the gray place. And so the entire story is kind of leading up to finding out what happened to him. And that's what really kept me intrigued. Now, like I said, I've read this book before. And I didn't remember how it ended. I do have to admit the ending was a tad disappointing. I think it could have been done a little bit better. It seems like there was this whole build-up, and then the ending happened, and then that was it. You know, so there is that. But it was good, and I enjoyed it, and it was really good on audio. It's part of the Audible Romance package, so if you have that and you're interested, check it out. Again, I'm going to touch on this point really quickly. It is an erotic novel. But everybody's level of comfortable is different. Some people might totally go for the 50 Shades of Grey type of erotica and have no problem with it. Again, not much bothers me. You know, I can read the 50 Shades. It's not my preferred, but if it's in a book, it doesn't, you know, I can read the more, what's the word I'm looking for? General, standard, run-of-the-mill, the boring sex. No, I'm just kidding. But the normal stuff. That's what this novel is. It doesn't push the envelope. It doesn't toe the line. It's very run-of-the-mill, nothing too out there. It's frequent, I'll tell you that. You know, as you're reading along in the book, you'll get, it's frequent, but it's not overtly graphic, and it doesn't go on and on and on for pages. Do you know what I mean? As I was reading it, I couldn't help thinking, now again, this was published in 2009, so it was almost 10 years ago. I don't know how much has changed, but this was billed as an erotic novel, and I'm having to wonder what the stipulation is. What classifies one as another? Do you know what I mean? Because I've read Maisie Yates, I've read Jill Shalvis, and I find them to be more graphic than this book was. It's just, again, in their books, you might have 3 or 4 scenes with that adult content, whereas in this book, you had, no word of a lie, probably 30 to 50. You know, it was every once, at least one time a chapter, if not 2 or 3. But again, it wasn't overtly graphic. It was like maybe 2 paragraphs. If you were actually physically reading in a book, it would be 2 or 3 paragraphs, and then it was done. You know, so if you're hesitant, I'm just giving you the heads up. Again, if that's something that makes you very uncomfortable, then don't read it, and that's fine. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really interesting story. It was really engaging. My favorite parts were the past, like when she was younger, and they're not young, they're in their early 20s. So yeah, so anyway, that's that book. The next book that I finished was Avalanche of Trouble by Cindi Myers. This is a romantic suspense novel. It is Eagle Mountain Murder Mystery Book number 2. It is a Harlequin intrigue novel, number 1799, published in 2018 by Harlequin. This one just came out in August. It has an average rating of 4.24 stars on Goodreads. I gave it 4 stars. I got 1 challenge for this one. This is my Fly Around the World challenge that I'm doing with the A Million More Pages group, where you fit author names to match airport codes. And the goal is to get from July the 1st to, is it July? I think it's July the 1st to December 31st, so 6 months, to get 105. So essentially to read 105 books in that time period. This was my number 27, and I got Columbus, Ohio, which is CMH, so Cindi Meyer. So this story is about a woman named Maya, and at the very beginning of the book, her sister and brother-in-law are murdered in the mountains, in Eagle Mountain in Colorado. She lives in Denver, and the lead investigator, the sheriff in town, his name is Gage. He calls her to, of course, give her this very sad news. And she immediately asks, well, where's their daughter? And he said there was no child there. So half of this book is spent looking for that little girl, because they assume that when the gunman killed her parents, she took off. She is actually deaf, and she communicates with sign language. And a lot of that was talked about in the book, and there's some really cute scenes, like with Gage learning the sign language. I really enjoyed this story. Like I said, the first half is pretty much set on trying to find the little girl, and then the second half is them trying to find out who the killers are, because the killers are now after the little girl because they think that she knows something about what happened. There's a lot of action, a lot of adventure, a lot of suspense in this book. My only issue with this book, and I know it's a romance, and I know it's meant to have a romantic element in it, but in my personal opinion, you don't always need to do it. You don't always need to take the characters to bed. Does that make sense? They can have a romance. They can begin a relationship, you know, and, you know, there's nothing wrong with, I think that's great. But in certain situations, I just don't feel that they need to make that next step. And in this book that they did, and I don't think it worked with the story, in my opinion. Because, the reason I say this is because This story takes place over a very short time period of like a week. So 3 or 4 days into this book, or into Maya finding out her sister has been murdered by a killer. Technically, that's how you get murdered. But regardless, she's sleeping with the cop. I'm sorry. Again, everybody grieves differently. Maybe that's how she grieves. I don't know. But again, I just don't think it was needed. They could have started a relationship. They could have feelings for each other. You know, it could be very innocent. And then you could go like 6 months into the future or something. I don't know. I just, it did kind of, it bothered me. It bothered me a great deal because, I don't know, again, maybe it's just me. Everybody's different. But I just didn't, I think the story would have worked fine without it. Like I said about the other book, I can take it or I can leave it. It doesn't bother me either way. Sometimes, you know, you don't mind it, but when you're putting it in for the sake of putting it in, no pun intended, I don't. I'm gonna get kicked off YouTube. It's not needed all the time. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, that's it for that book. The next one that I finished were The Ones That Got Away by Roni Loren. This is a contemporary romance novel. It is book number 1 in the Ones Who Got Away series. It was narrated on audio by Janine Bartel. It was published in 2018 by Source Books. Average rating of 3.99 stars on Goodreads. I got 4 stars. I got 2 challenges for this one. For my What to Read in 2018, go through your homepage and scroll through the updates and pick a book mentioned. So from all your friends that you scroll through and you say, oh, so-and-so is reading this, or so-and-so finished this, or whatever. Karen, back at the end of July or early, it must have been, excuse me, I got hiccups again. Must have been the end of July, posted this book, Karen from Rather Be Reading. And I immediately went, ooh, because it was on my TBR to read. So thank you for adding that at the time, so I saw it. I really enjoyed this one. The other challenge that I got was the Fly Around the World challenge again. I got Burlington, Iowa. BRL is the airport code, and that's my 28th for that challenge. So the reason this got 4 stars and not 4.5 stars is, and this is no fault, it's got nothing to do with the writing, nothing to do with the characters, all of that was fantastic. The reason I had to knock it down a star rating is because we sadly in our society today, that the main event that is the catalyst that sets off this book series happened. And it's so frequent, sadly, in our society now that it's that you can write about it in a book fictionally. Does that make sense? So for those of you who are unfamiliar with this story or with this series, The Ones That Got Away, the basis of the series is about a group of friends who were not necessarily friends in high school, but they were brought together by circumstance, are all survivors of a school shooting 12 years earlier. And yeah, I'm not going to get political on my channel. I will talk about adult content until the cows come home, but I will not talk politics. I will not talk gun rights. I will not talk any of that. All I'm going to say is my only thing on this entire subject is guns are not toys. They are not meant for fun. They are not meant for entertainment. They are meant to kill. Period. That's all I'm going to say. I am very much against guns, and I always have been. But that being said, that's all I'm going to say. Feel free to agree or disagree with me. That's your business. But the fact that this is so frequent now, sadly, in our society, that it could be the basis of a book series upsets me. And I'm not upset at the author. I'm not upset at the publisher. None of that. I'm upset at the fact that this happens. And it shouldn't be happening to children. To anyone. It shouldn't be happening to anyone. So, that being said, the book itself was fantastic. So this is the story of Liv and Finn. And the two of them, like I said, were survivors of this horrible incident. And they survived it. They were actually having a relationship in high school. But it was a secret relationship because Finn was from a very, very well-to-do family. And Liv was literally his gardener's daughter. You know, his parents' gardener's daughter. So, you know, talk about like two opposites. So the two of them were having a secret relationship. And this event that took place, the school shooting, happened the night of senior prom. And he had brought another date. Now, he wasn't actually dating this girl. But, you know, she was also from a very well-to-do family. And the parents just figured blah, 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 you know. So I guess they just went together. So he was actually in the janitor's closet with Liv when the gunman came into the school, and he left her there and went to go check and find out about his date, where he was then shot and not killed, but he was actually saving his date's life. And the gunman found Liv but didn't shoot her and took off. So both her and Finn are now, and along with the other characters in this series, are suffering from quite a bit of PTSD. Absolutely understandable. And it's the guilt that both of them live with, in a way. Like, she has believed for the past 12 years that he left her there to die, like, to die. He didn't, like, she didn't know. None of them knew at the time. You don't know in that flash instant what's going to happen. But in her mind, he left her. And on the other hand, he is holding that guilt for leaving her there and not going after her. So the rest of the characters in this series, are 3 other girls, are going to be the main basis of the books, I'm assuming, are these girls that you met in this first book. And what I really, really loved about this is that you're meeting these secondary characters. And even though they're secondary characters in the story, they still have so much personality, and they're so absolutely fantastic. You know, they really, all the characters seem to jump off the page. Sadly, again, a real life situation, but it was handled so very well. There were some very poignant moments in this story. This does have some adult content in it, more on the spicy side, but it was well done and I liked it. The relationship grew naturally. So her and Finn, I didn't get back to that point. So her and Finn are kind of thrown back together again because there's this documentary being done. You know, 12 years after the fact, how are their survivors doing, that kind of thing. And so they kind of meet back up again, and they hadn't seen each other since, really, since around that time period. And he's taking some time off. He has a very dangerous job, and he's kind of taking the summer off, and he's staying up at his parents' cabin at this lake, and there's a guest cottage, and she's kind of needs some stress relief as well. So, you know, she's trying to change her life and stuff like that, so he invites her to come stay at the guest cottage, and one thing leads to another. So, you know, it was a really fun story, but again, it had some very sad, poignant moments in it, but really, really well done. And yeah, I am very, very much looking forward to reading the rest in the series. The next book that I finished was Cowboy Charm School by Margaret Brownley. This was a book from NetGalley, so thank you very much, NetGalley and the publisher Source Books for giving me this book for me to review. Sorry about the cars going by. This is a historical romance, American West. It is book number 1. Sorry, my leg's cramping up. It's book number 1 in the Hayward Bride series. It was published in 2018 by Source Books. This actually comes out on Tuesday, September 4th. So if it sounds interesting to you, definitely go and check it out. It has an average rating of 4 stars on Goodreads. I gave it 4.5 stars, you guys. I love this one. So I got 3 challenges for this one. My monthly challenge, Women's Equality Day, which was to read a book with a strong female character, and this one absolutely does. For task number 18 for my What to Read in 2018, which was sort your TBR by 40 books per page and sort the titles from A to Z and read a book off the first page. Her last name starts with a B, so it was on the first page. And then again for the Fly Around the World challenge, I got Bay City, I think it's Michigan, MI? It's MBS is the airport code, and that's number 29 for that challenge. So this one was so cute. The only reason it did not get a 5-star rating from me, and you know, I'm kind of, I want to write the publisher and say, please change this. And it's little, and it might not be like something that bothers anybody else, but it kind of bothered me, and it always bothers me with historical books. Any historical book, please put the date the book takes place in. You know, easily open up the book, chapter 1, prologue, you know, Arizona Territory, 1845. That's all I need to know. You know, you don't have to mention it every chapter, just once at the beginning of the book. This did not mention the time period in the book. I even went back and looked. I had to guess. And my assumption is it took place sometime after the Civil War. It takes place in, the location is actually Texas. And yeah, so I was a little bit disappointed in that. And you know, I know to knock a half-star rating off for that. But as a reader, you kind of want to, especially if you read a lot of historical, you want to kind of know what the time period is. Do you know what I mean? Especially when it's something like the American West. You know, could it be like the early 1800s or the late 1800s? It could even be the early 1900s. You know what I mean? It's kind of nice to know that, to know where you are in time, right? So outside of that, that being said, I loved this book. Oh my gosh. So the premise of this story is about a woman by the name of Kate, and she is marrying a gentleman by the name of Frank. As the book opens, the very first chapter, the two of them are getting married. And Brett, who is a Texas Ranger, comes running into the church and yells, "Stop to the wedding," and shoots his gun in the air to stop the wedding. And somebody gets all flustered and they knock over a candle that starts to burn the altar cloth, so it's kind of a whole comedy of errors, if you will. He's looking for a man who is the leader of a ring of robbers. Like, they've been robbing trains and stagecoaches and banks and things like this. Bank robbers, essentially. And he thinks that the groom is the leader of this ring of bad guys. And it's not the groom. It's just somebody with the exact same name. So, of course, he feels bad. And he tries to apologize to Kate, the bride, and the Texas... Did I say his name is Brett? His name is Brett. And so he tries to apologize. And, you know, he's kind of like, you know, whatever. And Frank, the groom, is very, very jealous. He's always been a jealous sort. And he immediately starts saying to Kate, "How do you know this guy? Did you, you know, like..." So they essentially break off the wedding and everybody goes their separate ways. So then Brett's going to be in town for a while until they can find these bad guys. And so Frank comes to him and is essentially blaming him for breaking up his wedding because he's trying to get Kate back. But Kate doesn't want to take him back because she thinks like he's way too jealous. So most of the book is spent with Brett trying to teach Frank how to be a gentleman and do these things that ladies like. Like, for example, you know, for one of their anniversaries, or one of her birthdays, Frank gave her an egg beater as a gift. And, you know, Brett's trying to tell him, women like flowers. You know, what's her favorite color? He has no idea what her favorite color is. You know, things like that. So that's the charm school aspect, is this cowboy teaching this guy how to, you know, be a gentleman and, you know, do things that ladies might like. So it was absolutely adorable. But of course a relationship develops between Kate and Brett, but it's a very slow burn relationship. You know, most of the book is actually him throwing Frank at her. And it's mostly because he really likes her, but he knows he's going to eventually be leaving town. Once the bad guys are caught, he's going to go and he's not going to be around anymore, and it's not fair to her. So this is also a very clean story, by the way. There is no adult content in it. So if that is something that, you know, you prefer your stories without it, please check this one out. The other thing that I absolutely loved about it was the characters themselves. This small town of Haywire, you meet some real, true characters. You know, Kate and her aunt, Letty, actually own the local candy store. So you learn a lot about candy making, which is a lot of fun too. But there's all these different characters that you know, inhabit this small town that you meet. And I'm very much looking forward to more books in the series so I can see more of these characters again. The other thing about the whole bank robbers and stuff like that, that part of the story, that mystery aspect of it, very much felt like a cozy mystery to me. Because the way I differentiate the cozy mystery from, like, I know cozy mysteries are meant to be like an amateur sleuth, but in this aspect, not that, I mean, he's a Texas Ranger, he's not an amateur, but it just didn't have that same danger that you would normally feel in a mystery novel. You know, there was a bit of lightheartedness to this novel, and, you know, like I said at the beginning, it's a few comedy of errors kind of idea. It was so much fun, and I absolutely recommend it, and please go pick up a copy of it on Tuesday when it comes out, because I absolutely adored it. And the last book that I finished this week was My Fair Princess by Vanessa Kelly. This is a historical romance Regency novel. It is book number 1 in the Improper Princesses series. It was narrated on audio by Beverly A. Crick. She is quickly becoming one of my new favorite historical narrators. It was published in 2016 by Zebra. Average rating of 3.83 stars on Goodreads. And I gave it 3.5 stars, excuse me. I got this for challenge number 2 for the Triple RC, Olympian Gods and Goddesses Hera, which was to read a book that has royalty, and she's a princess. And for my What to Read in 2018 for task number 19, I got Pick a List on Listopia and read a book off of it. So the list I picked was the August 2016 Historical Romance Releases list. So that's the book I got this one from. This one is available on the Audible Romance package, which is where I read it from, so in case you're curious, and you want to check it out for yourself. So this entire series, the Improper Princesses series, is about, I think it's 4 books. So it's 4 girls or 4 women who are the illegitimate daughters of very well-to-do men in British society. She is the daughter of a duke, but of course she's never been acknowledged. There was a big scandal when her mother got pregnant. So her mother and her grandmother took her, Jillian, which is our main character, to Sicily. And she was raised running free on the Italian countryside. She had very little supervision growing up, very little boundaries put on her. So as such, she is a very, very, she's difficult. She's not your typical English bred lady of the time. And now she's back in England because she's in her early 20s and her mother feels it's time for her to essentially snag a husband. She doesn't need the money. She's independently they've got money. The family's got money. So she doesn't need to marry for money. But her mother just feels that this is now the time. So now that they're back in England, they have hired this gentleman by the name of Charles. And Charles is actually a duke. And he's an old friend of the family. And they essentially hire him, in a way, to train her in being a lady. You know, the way to act, the way to talk. You know, like I said, she was raised in such a way that she swears. She knows how to fire a weapon. She gets into fights. She's a tomboy, you know, like really, like nowadays we'd probably classify her. I'm not saying that, you know, ladies don't swear, because believe me, I have the mouth of a sailor at work. And I'm still a lady. But you know what I mean? Like for proper English society. So yeah, it was really, really fun. And there is quite the age gap between the two of them from my understanding from the book. She's in her early 20s and I think he's in his mid or early 30s. But yeah, and of course the two of them develop a relationship. But, you know, it was really interesting to read. 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. I found, though, sometimes she pushed back a little bit too much. It just got to be a little too much with how much she was pushing back on trying to be, and not that she was being trained, but being taught how to act certain ways and just to be polite in society. I just felt that she was often very, very rude to Charles, and that kind of did bother me a little bit. But, you know, you kind of get over it, and it is what it is. I enjoyed it. I enjoy a good historical novel, and this one definitely fit the bill. So here I was just complaining at the very beginning that I'm glad the last videos didn't upload because they were super long. And here this one is going to be super long. My apologies in advance. Not really in advance. Later in the episode, later in the video. So what am I currently reading? My current audiobook is Cocoa Beach by Beatrice Williams. This is being narrated on audio by Eva Kaminsky, excuse me, sorry, and Alex Wyndham. This one, guys, I'm only about 2 hours into it. I think I'm going to love this one. I really, really do. So this book takes place it's also a dual timeline, but it's not a big timeline. It's a 5-year gap. So essentially this is the story of a woman named, is it Virginia? I think her name is Virginia. And it starts out in 1922 in Florida. And she has not just found out, but her husband has died. Now she's been estranged from her husband for a little while, for about a year or so, I think, but he has passed away. He died in a house fire. And she has now taken over control of everything that he had. He had a shipping company. He owned hotels. He owned 2 or 3 houses, you know, blah, 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 blah. And she now is the heir to all this. And she has a 2-year-old daughter from him, right? So it also goes back in time to 1917 in France. She was, during the First World War, or the Great War, I believe is what they were calling it, or how they refer to it in the book, because World War II hadn't happened yet. But she was a nurse, essentially, for the Red Cross, and she was working in France, and she met the husband, whose name is Simon, and he was a surgeon, and he's British, and the two of them, so the story, like I said, I'm only about 2 hours into it, so I'm only on chapter 6, I think, but it's now after the husband's died, and then I think it goes back to their courtship, and like I've just gotten to the point where they've just met, and you know, and then it will go to, so I think she's trying to figure out the mystery of what happened to her husband and how he died and why he died, and it deals with prohibition and rum smuggling, and it just sounds like it's going to be fantastic. The narration is spot on. I am thoroughly enjoying the narration, any narrator that can pull off both a British accent and an American accent as two characters are speaking back and forth to each other, I am thoroughly impressed. And this narrator, it's mostly, I've only heard the gentleman narrator, what's his name again? Sorry, bear with. Alex. I've only heard Alex, like, at the very, very beginning. He did, like, the little prologue opening part. Eve, has been doing the rest of it. Is it Eve or Eva? Eva, excuse me, has been doing the rest of it. Brilliant job, guys. I borrowed this one from my library, so if you get a chance to, so far I'm loving it, but I'll definitely let you know my thoughts on it next week. So my current ebook is The Deputy's Redemption by Delores Fossen. This is book number 5 in the Sweetwater Ranch series. I literally read the first half of a chapter today. It's been a busy day. But I am thoroughly enjoying it, and yeah, so I'll let you know about that one next week too. My current childhood book is Deadly Intent by Carolyn Keene. This is book number 4 in the Nancy Drew, or book number 2, excuse me, in the Nancy Drew Files series. This is the series from the 80s, and if you look at that cover, the Twin Towers are in that cover because it takes place in New York City. I know. I noticed it and I went, oh, one of those, you know, you'll always remember where you were on 9/11. But, okay, outside of that, sorry, I just had to point that out. So in this story, like I said, it takes place in New York City. Nancy and her cousins, Bess and George, are have gone to New York to see a concert of a very, very famous band. And just before the show starts, their lead singer goes missing. And essentially now Nancy is tasked with trying to find him and where he is and what's happened to him. So yeah, so that's that one. And so far I'm enjoying it. I'm about, I think, 30 or 40% of the way through it. And my current print book, I'm not reading one right now. I was reading one, it was a historical. I think I kind of burnt myself out last week with historicals because last week, like, if you look at my list, I read how many? Hold on. Well, Double Love, we can consider the Sweet Valley High one a historical, sort of, kind of. It was the 80s. You know, 2 of them, at one point, I was reading Cowboy Charm School, and I was reading My Fair Princess, and I was also reading my historical print book novel. And I think I was just kind of historically burnt out. So I put it aside. I'm not DNFing it. I like the book. So far, I was only like 2 or 3 chapters in, so I've put it back on my bookshelf, and I'll pick it up at a later date. It was a Regency, and I think I was kind of like off of Regencies for a little bit. But the next one I'm going to pick up tomorrow at Walmart, and that is going to be the pick that you guys picked for me from my Harlequin Anticipated Reads video. And the book you guys picked for me is Deputy Defender by Cindi Myers, which is book number 3 in the Eagle Mountain Murder Sisters series. I read book number 2 earlier this week, so that'll be fun. I'm excited to see these characters again. So, like I said, tomorrow when I'm at Walmart, I'm going to pick it up, so I'll have it next week to talk about. I probably won't be finished it by next weekend, but I will still be able to talk to you guys about it. So, last little book-related thing, my book haul. I've got 2 books. I got approved for 2 more books on NetGalley. Both of these are coming out in November. Again, I'm very, very careful with the amount of books that I request from NetGalley. I limit myself to 3 or 4 that are coming out each month. So if I think there's 1 more that I'm hoping to get approved for. And if I get approved for that one too, that will be it. And then I can kind of look at some stuff that might come out in December, so we'll see. But I did get approved for both of these, so thank you to the publishers in NetGalley. So the first one is Best of Luck by Kate Clayborn. I am super stoked about this one. I've seen this all over Bookstagram, and the previous books in the series, and people have talked about them and how much they've enjoyed them. The premise of this series, the series is called Chance of a Lifetime, and this is book number 3. The premise of this series is about 3 best friends who go in together and buy a lottery ticket and win like the super, super like Powerball type jackpot, and then what happens to their lives after that. And it just sounds so great. The covers are adorable, so I'm really, really looking forward to this one. I think in this one, the main character decides to go back to school, and something, obviously, romantic happens with that. The other book is called You Had Me at Cowboy by Jennie, Marts. This is book number 2 in the Cowboys of Credence series. I mean, don't we all? It's funny because when I saw the title, when Reed Bliss contacted me a few months ago about doing some videos, and the one that I did most recently that hasn't been published yet, I don't think it's been posted yet. The one that's all about cowboy romance. When, you know, they asked me, they're like, would you do one on cowboy romance? And I'm like, exactly like this title, You Had Me at Cowboy. So it is the story of a man, I think his name is Mason, and he's got a brother named Rock. And Rock is some sort of famous, I think he's a sports type guy, some football player maybe. And his brother, the super famous brother, is getting married. So Mason's at this wedding, and he meets this girl, and they kind of hit it off, and I guess one thing leads to another, but she's holding a secret, and that secret is that she's actually a reporter. And she has been told by her boss at whatever it is, newspaper or magazine that she works for, that if she can't get an interview with Rock, she's going to lose her job. So it sounds in a way very, very similar to the first book in the Kowalski series by Shannon Stacy, that I can't remember the name of now, but I absolutely love that story. It'll come to me later. I'll put it right here. But it's the same type of a premise that, you know, you need to get this interview or you're going to lose your job. And of course there's a romance. But the difference in this one is that the romance is not between the famous person and the reporter. It's between the famous person's brother and the reporter. So it does look like a lot of fun. And of course the cover's very intriguing. So yeah. So anyway, that's it for book stuff. If you guys want to jet out now and you don't want to hear about the knitting, I will see you guys next week. But if you want to stick around to see what I've been knitting, please do. So, like I said, the original videos got corrupted. So, I had my little stitch marker that I was showing you guys. This is how much I've done since last week. I already moved it when I was uploading these, or attempting to upload these videos to my computer. So, we're going to have to just guess. So, for my sweater, guys, I'm super pleased. Check it out. The body's done. I finished it. Oh, it's curling up. But yes, I finished the body and it fits amazing. I'm so pleased. So I was like somewhere like up here last week. I don't remember. But I finished the body and I have cast on the first arm. So I'm actually thinking I might get this done in the next few weeks. So I'm super, super excited. It's going to be so nice and warm. And hopefully within the next few weeks, the humidity will have gone and I can wear it. The sweater pattern is called Seclude. And excuse me, sorry. And it's designed by Alicia Plummer. I will try to remember to leave links to both knitting patterns in the description box below. The yarn I'm using is acrylic from Knit Picks. It is one of my favorite yarns. For sweaters, I just love acrylic yarn. It washes well, it wears well, you know, it's absolutely, I just got this great sweater pattern from a friend, and it's got color work here. It's like something that you wore when you were a kid, you know what I mean? Like a cardigan with this beautiful, like, you know, something. Oh, I can't wait to knit it. That's going to be, not next, but I think that might be like around the holidays. I might start that one. So yes, so that's my sweater. And I've also been working on my sock this week. So this pattern is called the Couch and Cracker Socks, and it's by Julia over at the Happy Knitting Podcast. And I'm partway through a row because I was knitting on this. Oh, but I didn't move the stitch marker. Yay. I was knitting on this while I was uploading. So I'm partway, sorry, my hair's doing weird things tonight. So I didn't move the stitch marker for this one. So there, where the kitty cat is where I was the last week, when I showed you guys this last week. It doesn't look like I got much done, but I did put the heel in. So I've now got the heel, and I'm just working on the leg. So typically, once I get to the leg on a sock, I can finish that in less than a week. It is a long weekend. It's Labor Day for us here in Canada as well. So I plan on doing some knitting on this this weekend while I'm listening to my audiobook, because it's relatively mindless. I mean, so is the sweater. Both are. So the yarn that I'm using for this one, do I have the little taggy do? Yes, I do. This is by Bling Your String, and it is the Meep colorway. So there it is, Bling Your String. So yeah, so I'm really, really enjoying this one. Now, the kind of fun thing that I did on my last recording that got corrupted, sorry, I'm still really peeved about that. The last recording that I did is that I have a bag up there. I'm not going to pull it back down again because it's just too hot in here. And it's essentially this big, it's an Alice in Wonderland bag, and it's like this big, it's huge. And what I did about 2 years ago is I took all these skeins of sock yarn that I had, just random skeins of sock yarn, and I put them in brown paper bags, and I gave each of them a number, like each bag a number. And then what I did was like a random little number generator, and then whatever number I pulled that bag, and that was the next pair of socks that I knit was from that yarn. Because I have a hugely insane yarn stash. And it can get overwhelming, much like with book. Like if you're standing in front of your bookshelves and you're like, what am I going to read next? And, you know, it's a little overwhelming. Whereas if you do something like that and it kind of picks it for you, you're like, all right, that looks good. So I went through all those yarns, and the cool thing was it took me about 2 years to get through all of those yarn. So by the time, like even 2 or 3 months in, I forgot what yarns were in there. So every time I pulled one out, it was like Christmas all over again. So I've done it again, and I filled the bag with 14 different skeins of yarn. So here, when I filmed it the last time, I actually opened the bag for you guys to see my next yarn, because I will be casting these socks on before I talk to you guys again for my next weekly reads. So because I've already opened it, I can't really do it again because it's just kind of, it's not as fun, but I've already got the bag picked out that I'm going to use, because your bag has to match your yarn, people. This bag was made by my friend Sue over at the Tangled Skein CA. It's a really, really cute little, it's a Japanese knot bag. So you just kind of do that, and it just kind of, it perfectly holds a ball of yarn and knitting needles to do a pair of socks. That's why I like it. But here's the yarn, guys. Oh my god. I've owned this yarn for about 3 years, and I'm so pleased to start knitting with it. Isn't that gorgeous? I'm going to have to ball it up, obviously. But yeah, there it is, all skeined up. Like I said, I bought this about 3 years ago, and I bought it strictly, not only, the color is beautiful. I don't necessarily just buy a yarn because of the name, but the name factored into this a great deal to really push me over the edge to want to buy it. So there are all different, look at the pinks and stuff in there, guys. This pattern, I think I'm going to do another pair of pattern socks, is going to be Hermione's Everyday Socks. And they are a really, really fun yarn pattern. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. And yeah, it's really, really cute. It's just knits and purls and stuff like that as the pattern, but I've knitted a bunch of times, and it's really, really fun and mindless. But this yarn is from a company called, is that going to focus? It probably won't focus because I had to set the camera up to focus on my face, or else it was just blinking all over the place. Spun Right Round is the company name, but the yarn name is Combat Boots and Baby Doll Dresses. That was me in the 90s. I could show you guys my yearbook. I had the cutest baby doll dress that I used to wear at least once a week, and it was patchwork, like a patchwork quilt, and it was in pastel colors, so like all these pinks and yellows, and like this is just so, you know what I mean, like this was just so me. And then I had those black Doc Marten boots that I used to wear because we all thought we were so cool. We were cool, damn it. But yeah, so I'm really, really looking forward to finally getting to knit with this. I think it's going to be fantastic. So yeah, so that's it. Videos coming up this week, you guys. Unfortunately, the other thing that got corrupted was the start of one of these videos. I'm actually vlogging this weekend, and all the footage I've taken up until this point is gone. So when the vlog starts, when you see it on Tuesday, it's going to probably start on Sunday. I will, of course, explain in that if you guys don't end up seeing this. Although if you don't end up seeing this, you wouldn't have heard me talk about this, so it's a moot point. But yeah, so that is coming. I figured it's a long weekend. You guys were saying how much you enjoyed the last vlog, so I just thought it'd be a lot of fun to do. So yeah, that's that. And then my other video on Thursday is going to, of course, be my wrap-up for August, not September. September just started. So it will be my wrap-up video. So yes. All right, guys, I'm leaving you now. I'm going to go, and fingers crossed this works, and you guys are going to actually see this. If you don't see it, it doesn't matter again. I shouldn't even be saying it, but if it doesn't go up, I'm not even going to bother trying again because I'm tired. But anyway, guys, until my next video, take care and happy reading, everybody. Bye.